You gotta back it up to see it. We don't see how grave our situations are until we can step back and look at it from a distance. That's why taking time to process is so important. We have to give ourselves the space. We're led to keep all focus on them at all times. There's no space to stop and really look. So I decided to do a video today on some of the wild and nutty experiences that I've had living with a narcissist, so that you can find relatable experiences and somehow hopefully widen your eyes a little bit bigger and start seeing that your relationship might just be over the top. So here we go. I'm washing dishes. It's a normal day. Well, as normal as it can be with a narcissist. And in he walks and flips out on me. He's screaming really loud and telling me that I'm trying to poison him. At first, I didn't know what the heck he was talking about. He took me completely off track with that blunt attack on me. But as he went on with his rant, he was saying that I didn't rinse a dish properly, and he wasn't crazy because he saw the dish that I missed. And in his rant, he sounded so paranoid, and I literally saw it as that, his paranoia, and yet still pretty angry that he didn't care to do something about his issues here. But it wasn't until years later, after doing all of my studies on narcissism, that I realized what he had done that day was much, much graver than its first appearance. It wasn't paranoia after all, although they are paranoid. This guy, because I'm a hypnotherapist, or who knows, maybe he had studied up on it before meeting me, but I did find out that he was very knowledgeable on the subject in a response that he had to something that I had said once. It took me aback. Like, how does he know this stuff? And it wouldn't surprise me if a huge percentage of narcissists would have studied this. I mean, it's mind control, right? Let me know in the comments below if you know a narcissist who's dabbled in the subject that you're aware of anyway. The way hypnosis works is through emotions, confusion, or sometimes boredom. So take a person who just lost a loved one, and they're in this funeral lineup, and one person after another puts a hand on their shoulder and gives condolences. Later on in life, everything is normal again, and someone comes over, then puts their hand on their shoulder, and maybe while saying something like, "Hey, John, long time no see," or something, right? And John, who was having a normal day, suddenly feels sad and in pain. That is neuro-linguistic programming. The programming occurred via the emotional state. As per the programming via confusion is when someone can't think straight, and that's happened to you many times with these narcissists. They're coming at you so hard and fast you have no time to think straight. And what happens is when you're confused like that, the brain goes for the least resistance. I've used this example before, but I'll use it again. Take stage hypnosis, for example. At first, they'll dim the lights, maybe add some fog. They're creating fear, emotion. Then they're going to increase the fear via drum rolls while choosing the subject. But once they've picked them and have them up on stage, they'll make them wait, making the anxiety almost go through the roof. Then, as an example, the hypnotist might have his subject in front of him, puts his hand forth for a handshake. The subject in turn will bring their hand forth while the hypnotist retrieves his and scratches his head, and at the same time puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Sleep." And the subject immediately goes to sleep. The confusion mixed in with fear, they never shook the hand, right? The brain jumped straight to the first thing that made sense because everything else had been all too much. The subconscious mind took it in. When a person is in high emotions or confused, suggestions and experiences go directly into the subconscious mind. Now, getting back to my story here, emotion, confusion. When he came into the kitchen like that, attacking me in full force, he did two things. He created confusion. It all came out of left field. Then the emotional, as he continued upsetting me by yelling, followed by the silent treatment where the wounds of abandonment resurfaced in me. The being incapable of standing up for myself by ending the relationship, and the efforts to try to talk things over. How many can relate here? They do these unacceptable things, and we're the ones trying to get the relationship back on track. Basically, when we're doing these things, we are chasing cookie crumbs. We're writing emails to them and trying to resolve, when the bottom line is that you deserve so much better than that. But unfortunately, the programming was warped in childhood more often than not. Now, by using that knowledge, the silent treatment serves to reinforce the programming, further freezing you into place. You're frozen. You can't move. You can't make decisions. It's astounding how we don't see these things until much later. It's only then that we can think. We're so busy constantly having our minds around them due to their chaos. And when there isn't chaos, we're still thinking of how to please them so that they won't show up angry again. Survival mode. And that's confusion right there. More programming. And the programming whispers, who would ever want me anyway? Or I'm a nobody. Or I can't survive on my own. Or I'm strong. I can handle this, because growing up, you were made to be responsible for everybody else. To think of everybody else's stuff. So now it's not the poor narcissist's fault they had trauma. Anyway, this rant went on, I believe, for 3 days. That was usually the norm with his fits and silent treatment. Although at the end, these incidents lasted for weeks, partially because of me also, because I no longer made any attempts to calm his storms or resolve his issues. And notice how I said his issues. He was actually love bombing her and using me to answer her questions regarding tarot, because he had told her that he was a tarot reader to impress her, of course, and he was not. Remember, narcissists, they almost always imitate the things that you're involved in or talented in. If they see you shining in something that people are attracted to, they're going to steal it from you. On the other hand, if they're wanting you for a partner, they'll find out what you're interested in, and you find out that they're into that also. They weren't, but they used it to love bomb you, to reel you in. So now he's reeling her in. So anyway, here he is sitting in the office at home, chatting her up on this phone conversation and puffing himself up as a mystic. She would have been somebody who he learned was a person who leaned towards mysticism and used that to reel her in. And when she obviously asked him a question from tarot, he found a way to answer her through me, because he couldn't read cards to save his life. But he needed to save face here, right? So he comes into the room that I'm in, handing over the phone for me to do this reading on her. He told her that I was learning and it would be a good idea to ask me so that I could practice. And I imagine he would have told her that I was someone that he was trying to help, right? They're always trying to help us. You got to hand it to them. They're good. This guy was manipulating 2 people at the same time. No scripts. They're so experienced in lying that they know how to respond immediately. They know how to crawl out of holes easily and effortlessly and come out looking smooth. As for me, he told me it was somebody from work that he needed to be friendly with because of sales or something like that. It was advantageous somehow. Imagine if you were watching this as a movie, seeing the whole picture, but we only experience one side. So often we just don't see. It's all done so covertly. But on that day, I saw clearly what he was up to. You'll see. Once you end the relationship, as you go about walking your path, you'll begin to see clearly again. You'll look back and wonder how you ever lived through that. It's heavy, heavy, heavy abuse. And we might know it's abusive, but we aren't seeing how heavy the abuse actually is because there aren't any bruises. That right there in itself is a programming that we have. We think that real abuse or important abuse or grave abuse is only in the physical. You're now merely a shell of who you once were. Even your personality has changed. You don't do things that you used to do, the little things. And those are the little things that matter. Like maybe going for a drive and blasting your music. It's all these little things that make up for a life, for your sense of self. To want to jump out of bed in the morning just because the sun is shining. When is the last time you did that? And as the years progress, we're seeing the violence intensifying around us. There are more crimes being committed, like churches, schools, and cities. There are more reported incidences on the news that one partner caused a loss of life to another, or random stabbings. We have the Schumann resonance off the charts. We have solar flares that have the capacity to affect moods, and they really do for some people. They really affect people. We have prices soaring to a point of no return. People are stressed to the max, so the violence, like the Celestine prophecy talks about, the violence is waking us up. The Celestine prophecies talked about that. The Bible talked about that also, that the violence would ramp up. We're in those times, and although you might think that the narcissistic person in your life that you've known for a long time would never do something like this, don't be too vulnerable on that one. We just had a man here suddenly shoot his 2 children, and then he waited for his wife to come home, shot her, and then himself. And this was a family who was 100% involved in family life and baseball and hockey and whatever sport was in season. Now, do you think this woman knew that he would have gone this far? I don't think so, because had she suspected that, she would have left, because when it gets to that point, it's winter, it's cold, I have no idea anything is wrong, and all of a sudden he's in the living room removing the outside door. So I ran in asking him what the heck he's doing, and he has this vengeful smirk on his face. He wouldn't answer. He proceeded to head out to the garage as I followed him, trying to get him to explain what the heck is going on here. And now he's taking out the garage door lock and he's changing it. Now I have no access to my garage, and when I say my garage, I mean my garage. This is my house in which he moved in under the guise of renting a space. I was going through a health issue at the time and had to slow down my coaching as I was trying to figure out how to heal when I first met him, right? So I let him know this. I had just started dating him, and he says, I'll rent your space. So the next thing you know, he took over my whole house. He took over my whole life. I no longer had room to put things in the garage, and he was a hoarder. But anyway, it turned out that the reason that he did that was to punish me for having taken his keys, which I had not. He ended up saying that the doors would remain the same until I gave him his keys. So they remained, because I didn't have them. And the house got cold. But eventually he comes downstairs with his keys. That was his personal space up there where I didn't go. So obviously it was he that had misplaced them. By the time I had finished my studies on narcissism, and by then I was actually writing out a course on the healing from it, he was now threatening to take my house every time I would try to get him to leave. So I'm laying low trying to figure out how I was going to swim out of that one. And it isn't that he paid for any of my home renos here, nor furniture or anything really. But when you live common law around here, they have rights. But the thing was, I broke up with this guy 8 months into the relationship, and this is years later. Yet he still acted as though I was his girlfriend. There was no relationship. I told him he could stay as a renter, but the trauma bond still took place because he was the only one who knew about my illness and how to keep it at bay naturally, because I didn't want to be prescribed pills upon pills. And so I went for this protocol that was extremely complicated and tough to do, and he knew what to do. This guy was extremely intelligent. So anyway, the relationship became that since he was helping me through this, I helped him back. I would cook for him. I would let him borrow my vehicle so he could go to work, but he exploited that to a point where I had no right to my own vehicles. He'd do something to them to have them break down somehow so that I wouldn't feel comfortable taking them. Somehow he'd take them to the mechanics, and the mechanics said that they couldn't find the problems. Come on. But by the time he did this with my third vehicle, I had put my foot down and drove out of my driveway with it. And to boot, it wasn't a work week. I wasn't putting him in a situation of not being able to go to work. It was a Sunday. And he played at this church band in the area, and all other band members all lived in proximity, so he could catch a ride with whoever, which he did. By the time he came home, I was back. I was getting ready to do this eyes open meditation and something I call tea with self. So here I am making tea, and my nice calm meditation music was playing in my living room. my living room. He had his apartment upstairs. He comes barreling down the stairs, flies into the living room, and violently pulls out the CD player out of the wall. So I ran in the living room shouting like, "What are you doing?" and tried to take my player out of his hands, but to no avail. So disgusted with his behavior, I walked over to the kitchen garbage, pulled out the bag, and took it out. And as soon as I did that, he slams the door behind me and locks the door. No keys, no cell phone, and no jacket. I was out there for hours. Neighbors tried to get him to open the door, but he wouldn't. He kept telling me to call the police. And for me, I just didn't want to stoop that low. Come on. Get police involved for such childish drama. However, in the end, my neighbors convinced me to make the call because he wasn't letting me in. And so from there, we called. The police arrived. I was now let in. But now they want to know what's going on. And this guy took it to a whole other level. He made it seem as though we were a couple. He didn't just make it seem. He actually told the officer that. And somehow made me seem unhinged by his innocent, quiet, calm behavior. Another time it was a huge punishment for asking him to pick up an empty bowl on his way back in the house. And I asked him friendly and politely. But I'm not going to keep naming all the crazy things that he did here because I'd actually have a whole book. But who knows, maybe I'll do a series of these stories in the future. But the point in this video was to reflect back to you the things that they do that are so ridiculously out there that we somehow normalize. When we're on the inside, we can't see it. But when we're on the outside, we get to see the reality, and seeing the experiences of others like that makes us realize the seriousness of our own experiences as we can relate. And I find that when victims of this abuse can gather and talk about their experiences, they'll feel seen, they'll feel heard, and they'll feel understood, because other than we, the people who have been through this, no one understands, and we wouldn't even know where or how to begin explaining it to others because it's so ridiculously chaotic, the things that they do. And often trying to explain leads to feelings of shame because often they judge. People who haven't experienced this, they think it's all our fault for staying, and all we have to do is leave. They don't understand what it's like to be in freeze response. So please, if you can find the courage and if you feel safe to do so, tell your stories. I really want to hear them, and others do too. Because by telling your story or some experience that you've had, others often can relate because they've had a similar experience, which hearing it from someone else often makes them realize the seriousness of the situation, and in turn can sometimes help the listener decide to actively do something about it. So get to that comment section down below. That is all for today. I leave you with all of this to ponder on, and know that you aren't alone, and there's always hope for a new day. So start journaling. Take time for you. That's the first step. Give yourself that space to back it up and take a real good look at what's actually going on. One thing that can really help is to keep a journal and write down every incident that takes place every time you get put through more chaotic events. Because when you can see a compilation like that, it really helps to see the big picture. So take care of yourselves, and we shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.